This is Latinos on the Move, and I'm really excited to have this conversation with Luis Dominguez. And we're going to talk about his life, his journey, his career, some of his interests. And then we're going to talk about some of the key things about being Latino in the US. So, Luis, you got that run coming up in Santa Rosa, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've been training up for that. So excited. Not really trying to PR or anything. I don't want to set any high expectations or anything, but hopefully, do better than I did my last marathon. So I just did San Diego about a month ago and did that one in 420, I think, something like that. So I'm trying to shoot for four in Santa Rosa, but we'll see, we'll see how it goes.
What drives that competitive edge? What makes you just want to do better and keep going and do marathons?
I just started doing the marathons. Actually, the first time I did a marathon, I didn't mean to do a marathon. Like I signed up for the half marathon for LA with one of my friends. Well, at first so it was a weird kind of thing. Like I had started running during the pandemic and one of my run buddies convinced me to sign up for the marathon that I was ready for it. And so I thought I was gonna, and he's like, I have the hookup. I have like a free, code so that you can get a free marathon run. And I was like, all right, I'm in. I was like, I'll run marathon for free. Why not? I'll give it a try. But turns out that the guy who had the codes, he ran out of the marathon codes and he's like, all I have is a half marathon. And I was like, all right, man. All right, I'll sign up for the half marathon. It's cool. I'll show up. And I'll just do the LA marathon, but just the half marathon. And then when I got there the day of, I was feeling pretty good. And my friend, he's like, hey man, just run it with me, bro. Let's just do the full marathon. And I was like, all right, let's go. Let's do it. I'll do it. And then so that was the first time I did the marathon. And I was supposed to do the half marathon. So I like to say I got a lousy half marathon time, but it was a pretty good, full marathon on the first try. I think I did that one in like maybe about 5 hours or something, 4:45.
And how did you prepare yourself mentally, physically?
Well, I know a lot more about what because up until that point, actually, like because for a half marathon, honestly, you don't need to do the same level of training, I think, as for a full marathon. There's something like to do a full marathon, like the most important thing that you actually learn in your training is how to eat as you're running, right? And how to keep yourself like with proper nutrients, keep the salt levels, at the right level so that you don't gas out on the way there. But if you're just not feeding yourself appropriately and learning how to feed yourself, and what you can eat too, right? Because like sometimes we have sensitive stomachs and stuff, so like it's important to understand like what we can eat, especially like also when you're running in the marathon. Like sometimes there'll be like random stuff, right, that people are giving out, and it's like know what you can and can't eat, right? Because then it's like, oh, like if I eat that, like oh, it's gonna be terrible. But sometimes you just learn. You have a terrible marathon because you had a bad meal somewhere or something, or but that's part of the running adventure, I think. I mostly do it for stress relief, and just kind of being able to like clear my head and think about things as I'm running.
Yeah, no, that's really important. And I think, as we talk about health and we talk about the Latino community and just getting in that mindset is so critical. So, speaking of adventures, let's start off. Tell us about your life journey growing up in South Central LA, and how did you prepare to go into your career as a NASA engineer?
Well, I mean, I actually figured out I wanted to be an engineer pretty early on in my life, like when I was in middle school. But I ran into it kind of stance. It was more so because like I was really into like weirdly Greek mythology. That because I couldn't find books on Greek mythology like easily, I would go to the library at school, and then like I started looking at other books, and then one day one of my friends in my music class, he brought in an airplane book, and I was like, airplanes, these are so cool. I was like, I want to like build these. I want to design these. I want to figure out how to do this. And so I ended up going back into like the library, and at the library, the internet was kind of just like starting up a little bit, and you know that was one of the few places where you actually had access to the internet. And so like I looked it up, in the library. But I also had, the internet back at home, the net zero internet. Yeah, if you remember that, like the internet would come in a CD, right? And you install it on your computer. Um, but then you get all these freaking pop-ups, right? That you have to like click. Now, some people will never experience that, but but that's where I went in and like looked up like who are the people that kind of do this stuff, like work on airplanes, right? And it was like, oh, you could be an aircraft mechanic, right? You could be an aircraft technician, you could be an aerospace engineer. And I was like, oh, an aerospace engineer. I was like, that sounds kind of cool. I was like, all right. And my dad was a mechanic, so it kind of like, I was like, oh, all right, I'm gonna try and be an aerospace engineer. And if I can't do that, I'll be an aircraft mechanic, like my dad fixes cars, I could be a mechanic for planes. Like, like that's gotta do something, right? It's gotta be something fun. And so that's kind of like where like I kind of pivoted, and then that's where I decided, that's what I was gonna do. And so I went to Westchester High School because they had an aerospace magnet program, but they had no aerospace classes specifically. It was kind of funny. It's like, why do you guys call yourself an aerospace magnet? I mean, but they did have a lot of like math and science classes. So I took like physics and calculus, the AP ones, chemistry, like all sorts of that they had, a good STEM program there. So, and I killed it in high school. I wasn't doing too hot in middle school, to be honest. Like, that was kind of like where I slumped a little bit. And, but I think it was because in elementary school, I skipped fifth grade, and so when I got into middle school, I think I felt out of place, a little bit, and I was just like not as connected. I don't know, with like the way the school was going, and so I think, I just my grades took a dip in that time period, and but luckily I was able to like pick back out of it when I got to high school. I graduated with a 4 point, almost a 4.0, and then if you add in all the extra points for the AP classes and honors, it's like well above a 4.0. Uh, and that's when I ended up figuring out like, okay, where do I want to go? And I was like, I hated writing. I really hated writing. I liked reading. I just did not like I did not like writing, and so I never applied to any like of the UCs, right? Because you needed to write an essay or like so basically I didn't apply to any school that required me to write an essay. And so that like really limited the schools that I applied to, but I ended up applying to like most of the Cal States, and Cal Poly Pomona was one of the schools that I applied to, and they actually accepted me. And I went into their mechanical engineering program, and then from there, did a lot of side hustles, working doing gardening, working at convenience stores. I like to say, probably the fast food place, if you can name the place, I probably worked there for a little bit. If it's just like for a summer or something, because I was always just trying to like figure out a way to like, hustle a little bit and make some money, to pay for school and just have some, a little bit of cash on the side. And so got into Cal Poly Pomona, doing like all these side hustles. And then eventually I got an internship at JPL, in my was like my third year of college, and I dropped all the other side hustles, and then kind of just stayed there, and have been working there ever since. I started on the Mars Science Laboratory team, the Curiosity team, the assembly, test, and launch operations team, and that's really where my career pivoted around that kind of team, which is the assembly, test, and launch operations team that builds like the final spacecraft, gets it all like we like I'd say we build it, and we shake it, we bake it, and then we launch it. Like that's like what like my team does, and I've kind of pivoted all around that role kind of throughout my whole career, but kind of moving up and down through different aspects of building spacecraft, because I wanted to understand how you build like spacecraft and really understand how they actually work, like down at like to the guts, like to the like circuit board level, like and so I kind of just like worked my way down and at JPL into like different jobs that kind of gave me the opportunity to like understand that better, and then kind of came back up, to like this higher level of like assembly, and using like, what I've learned down at the low like circuit level and at the higher level to allow us to make better decisions, right? Because when you're building spacecraft, it's the little things that count often. Like you don't even like recognize it, like electrostatic discharge, ESD. So it's something that's very important when you're building a spacecraft, but you don't normally think about it. Like if you zap a piece of electronics, it could fail, and it's not a big deal. I build computers here at home, so I knew about like stuff like zapping things on my computer. Like I had zapped like pieces of my computer before that man made them not work. So I was aware of this. Most of the times we use zap stuff here that at home it still continues working, and you might not realize that it failed, but way later on, like 3 years later, but you just replace it. But if you zap something that's going to space 3 years later, you can't replace that, right? And so like I said, it's often like the little things that count, of like making sure that people ground themselves before they go and do stuff to touch things. You don't know that unless you're working in it, right?
So, you're this kid in South Central, you're using the library at your school with the old school dial up Wi-Fi internet setup, and then you kind of go through these side hustles, and then you become an intern. And now you're launching an element into space. Do you ever have that moment when where you're about to send something out into space and you're just thinking back like, wow, like you've come a long way? Has that happened in your journey so far?
Oh, most definitely. And I feel like that happens like almost every time. Like every time you have some big accomplishment or some big like feat that you're kind of like going towards, like that first marathon that I did, right? Like that first time I did the like I didn't think I could do one, like and when I ended up doing it, I was just like, oh wow, like this is it's crazy. Like and marathons really test you. I mean, like at once you get to like mile 20, right? Like that's like real, like that's where it gets real. Like it's like, is your body ready for it? Did you do your training? Did you properly like, keep yourself like, with your proper nutrients to like take you those last 6 miles? Because those last 6 miles are really the toughest. And often in most courses, they often make it the worst part too. It's just like you're going up a hill or something. Like I did San Diego, they had like mile 20 to like mile, it's like 24, or like maybe it's like 21 to 24, like 3 mile stretch. It's just this uphill thing, and they call it the highway to hill. And, bro, it's brutal. It is brutal. That was a brutal run.
I like how you related it back to running too, because oftentimes we think that our careers can happen overnight, and yet it's been a journey of endurance.
I have these four tenets that I like to live by, right? That I often tell kids when I talk to them, like, hey, like live your life with courage, curiosity, tenacity, and a healthy dose of altruism. And if you do those four things, like it doesn't matter really what you're studying, what you're into, like whatever you're doing, you'll succeed and the people around you will succeed, right? Because that's like just if you have that mentality, like it's just like only good things can come out of
Yeah, yeah, and I think I've heard you in other conversations really talk about those tenants, and I wanted to know, how did you develop them? Like, how did you figure out, okay, these are, like even like when you launch a spacecraft into space, like you got it down. Like we do these key
that.
things. So like, tell me
Yeah.
more about that. How did you set that
I
up, and how
think
did you come up with that?
I think it's like my systems engineering mindset, like that. Like, so it's like, it comes back to like what, like I study mechanical engineering, but then in my career, I've had to learn different aspects of spacecraft, like, right. And go into electrical engineering and understand how electronics work, right. And really like dig down into the details of like how these circuits work and all this, and really try to understand that. So I taught myself electrical engineering and I kind of like the basics of it. I wouldn't say I'm an electrical engineer by no shape or form, right? But I can understand it and I can talk to them and I can, look at a circuit and see, what the resistors are doing and see how the current is flowing and understand like, oh, this circuit's doing that. Oh, this circuit's trying to do that. And so that was the level that I needed, right? And so it's kind of like the systems engineering aspect of me, like my mind kind of just breaks things into like these digestible blocks. And so I came up with these four tenets actually as part of I was developing a keynote speech for the Adelante Young Men's Conference in Pasadena. And it was like going to be like maybe like 3,000 people or something like that. So I was super nervous and everything. And so I was trying to develop, what am I going to talk to them about? Like what, and and it was like, okay, like I want to talk to them about my life, right? And so I kind of just wrapped my life around these four tenets, and like how do I develop these tenets, right? Like courage, like no one's born with courage, and it's hard to be courageous all the time. Like I mean, sometimes it's really hard. You're really tested depending on the situation. You got to understand when to be courageous, right? But it's something you have to measure and develop and hone. And then curiosity, that's something that I think everyone's curious about something. Like there's always something that you're interested in, and if you just go into it, then that opens up to a bunch of other things. And because you've got that one interest, like you can use that and leverage that to learn a lot more. And so just find what you're curious about, find like what you're really into, and then use that to leverage out and leverage it, right? That kind of drive it, because when you're curious about something, you just like naturally want to like dig into it. It's like, yeah, I just need more of that. Like nobody needs to tell me anything, like I'm just gonna do it. And so then you use that to kind of like do other things and learn about other things and learn about other aspects, and then that's how you kind of just keep, you just got to keep growing, right? And never stop learning. Be tenacious about things. You're scared you're gonna fail. I do a lot of programming as well. Like a lot of computer programming, and so like, what I like to say is like, if you're a computer programmer, you know what failure is. Like, 90% of the code you write, is not gonna work. You're constantly like changing a little thing, and oh damn, that didn't do what I wanted to do. No, okay, I'm gonna and so you gotta get comfortable with failure and just learn from it. Like, it's okay to fail. And then finally, like, the altruism part, right? It's just like, just help other people. Like, if you help other people, I mean, there's been so many situations in my life where I have helped other people, and it just comes back. It's just like, if you throw yourself out there and you're helping, like, people notice, and it helps you, and it helps others.
It had me thinking about just curiosity in itself. It's like such a good, at least for me, like such a good metaphor to space as well. And now I want to start talking about NASA and space. What gets you curious these days about, Mars? What is it that really sparks your curiosity these days in your career?
Yeah, well, I mean, right now I'm working on the sample return lander mission. Um, which, depending on how funding goes for NASA, it will either happen or it won't. But I'm really excited about it. I mean, we're trying to bring back samples from Mars, in some of the most pristine conditions, right? And from areas that we think could have harbored life in the past, and so we're very excited, to like kind of bring all those samples back. And aside from that, I really enjoy like investments and like looking at like different investment vehicles, like stocks and like companies. And that kind of started actually when I was in college, because when I was in college was like when the financial crisis happened. And I actually had some extra money like in like my bank account when the financial like crisis hit, and I bought some stock in AIG, like down at the very bottom. It was like at 50 cents. Um, and it like popped back up, and I made a lot of money on that trade. And then I can't remember. I might have only maybe like quadrupled my money, and it wasn't even really that much. Maybe it was like I had put in like $2,000, and then it like popped up to like $8,000, and I was like, sell that, man. I was like, I need that money right now. And then, but like, you just don't know, right? I wasn't educated in the ways of the game, and I sold way too early, right? Like I did a good trade. I put in a good amount on the company. What I should have done is I could have taken some off the top, right? Probably, and like, but still held like a small core position or something. But hey, I needed that money. I was a college student, struggling to survive at that time. So those 8,000 looked really, really good. I mean, it was hard to like not pull out. But a winning trade is always a good trade.
Exactly, exactly. So you have this life outside of your career with running and investing. What would you say to someone that's interested in investing or might want to, have a life outside of their career? What advice would you give?
Start with an S&P 500 ETF investment. So, right, yeah, Robinhood's free. There's no fees. Get yourself put in $10, get a stake in the game, so you start seeing how it works and how the money fluctuates, right? And get comfortable with that. I mean, honestly, what really got me really comfortable is I actually invested in crypto. I didn't go crazy in crypto, but I did invest a little bit in crypto, and the swings that you see in crypto, in terms of like the volatility of like your money going up and down, that really, that really kind of hardens you. It makes you real tough. I mean, if you're actually holding on to the asset, right? Because like if you've held on to Bitcoin for a long time, you've seen the fluctuations, right? Of like how the money moves, and so being able to hold on through those large fluctuations because of your convictions, right? And standing by your convictions and understanding what that means when you say that for an investment, not just Bitcoin, but I mean, because Bitcoin's very speculative, and I would not, I would not advise people, invest a large portion of their portfolio in a cryptocurrency. It should be, I keep it at like 1% of my portfolio because, like, I don't like to live that dangerous lifestyle. But It's something that is, I think, in its infancy. I think there's good aspects of it and things that I think could potentially it could become something. But what it is right now is just like it's highly speculative, and as such, you have these very wild swings, which end up as wild swings in your portfolio, and it hardens you. And so now, like when I'm in like now much of my investments are like in the regular, like stock, like US S&P 500, kind of Russell 2000. I do a lot of like small cap stocks as well. But it's more reputable companies, and I really enjoy going in and doing the research on the different companies of what they do, what they're about, and then the because what you're doing is you're putting a bet on a company, right? So it's important that you understand what they're about, what they're doing, what's the business proposal, is it going to make money, and then put your money in it. That's what, if you believe in it, but the S&P 500 ETF, that's a nice way of just like, hey, let me spread my bets across the top 500 companies in the US. And it's like, that's probably a pretty good bet overall. And you're probably not gonna put that money on a better bet anywhere else. That's the other side of the coin as well. I mean, that's also if you have the money to set aside to do the investment. But setting aside little by little, making sure that you set up your budgets, everything, like you can always find a way to eke out a little bit and start kind of putting your skin in the game, because that's really is asset collection, I mean, growing your assets and growing and understanding how do you get a chunk of the pie, um, and grow with those assets, right? Diversify.
And how did you start thinking about money in that way around investing and buying stocks? How did that come together for you?
I mean, to a large extent, I mean, like I said, I got the bug when I made that big hit on AIG. And then ever since I started working, but I would always have a small kind of investment portfolio off on the side of like Scott Trade. Now I have Robinhood, and Charles Schwab are my two brokers right now.
So, Luis, we talked about your interest in running, on your career, and we talked money. And I want to get into a bit of questions. It's a little more reflection, but like really looking back, what were some of those key moments or decisions that most shaped your journey towards success?
I mean, that day that my friend bought that book on airplanes, honestly, I mean, that really kind of opened my eyes to like, oh, this is really cool. This is something, there's like, I want to learn about something, and then that drove me, right, to go learn more about how do I actually get that job. And and to a large extent, I use that. I did that keynote speech, right? I did it to the Adelante Young Men's Conference, right? Because I think I've always liked giving back to my community. I've always been like my last tenet, right? Be altruistic, right? Go out there and help others. And I thought it was a shame, that I lived 25 miles from JPL my whole life, and I had no idea that it ever existed there until I started working there. Honestly, I didn't even know that it was a NASA Space Center until they gave me a call to say that, hey, would you like to have an interview? And then I was like, yeah, 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 because I looked it up on my phone and I was like, oh, this is like NASA Space Center. I was like, oh, it's right here in Pasadena. I was like, what? Huh? What? And then I got the job there, and then I was like, wow, this is amazing. And I was like, oh my God, like Einstein used to walk around here. Like it's like, wow, like, and that also brings it back to like, honestly, like if I had potentially seen myself in any way like working at JPL at some point, I would have actually studied physics, I think, right? Because I think I'd like to have the understand like the basics, of how the universe works. Like that sounds really cool to me, right? And physics gives you like, if you understand physics and you go down those, like that's what physics is trying to understand. But I would have never thought of being a physicist growing up, right? Like, it's like, I'm not going to be no Albert Einstein, you don't see yourself that way. And so that brings it back to altruism. I did that keynote speech that made me develop these 4 tenets, because like I wanted to go out there and tell these kids like, hey, like, there's great things that you can do, and it's not going to be easy, but you gotta, if you do these 4 things, you'll do just fine.
And when you think about the next generation of Latinos in the US, what changes, whether it be in your industry or education or finance, What culture do you believe will most impact their ability to thrive?
It's gonna be AI, man. I think it's gonna be revolutionary, whatever it. I mean, it's already extremely powerful in terms of what you're capable of doing with it, and I do think it's going to lead to a lot of loss of jobs for folks, but also a lot of opportunity. I'm of the standpoint, AI is going to need a lot of energy, so I've just been investing in a lot of energies and commodities, right? That's kind of like my. I also like to do macro style investment, which is like where you do a big bet more on like the longer term of like where you think the economy is going. And so, most of the companies that I own are kind of like bets on that kind of that what I think is going to be the world that I see going forward. And I feel like that's how folks should approach their investments, right? Of like, hey, what is the world that I see out there? And then, okay, let me invest in companies that are going to be playing in that world out there.
Where are you looking to go next in terms of your message and your career?
Well, right now I'm really hoping that we we get funded and we were able to complete this mission because it would really it really close the loop on my career at JPL, sending the robots that have been doing the collection of the samples and now being able to go, bring the samples back home, kind of like it's a nice way to tie, end up tying a bow on the gift wrap. But and then, in terms personally, I mean, more marathons, like I said, I want to try and do a marathon every 2 to 3 months. I haven't signed up for my next one after Santa Rosa. So we'll see what that will be. But it'll be something in December maybe or January. Maybe I'll try like a trail run. I tried Catalina a few years ago, the ultra marathon, the 50 miler, and I didn't finish. I only got to 35 miles and I ended up quitting. It was a tough run for me. And I also did not train for it properly. Training is important, but yeah, so those are kind of like my big kind of goals right now. And then in terms of my kind of an investment, I mean, I'm mostly investing to like be able to set myself up to not have to worry about things, in the future. And so, that's primarily how I'm trying to approach all my investment decisions. And I'm also fairly young, so I can be a little bit more aggressive in my investment style. So that's another thing that folks should understand of like, who you are as an investor, what your like aggression level is, and like how much you can withstand in terms of losses. These are all like really important things that you need to like learn. And that's why I said like it's a good thing like to just buy like an S&P 500 ETF, yes, and then you can just like see it like doing these things, and you can see like what are the emotions that stirs up, right? If you've never done it before, because seeing your money swing hard, especially like when, Trump announced those tariffs and then, you saw the market just started dropping. Most people who have not been invested in the market before have not seen losses like that, right? They immediately was like, I'm gonna sell, I'm gonna sell, I'm gonna sell.
Yeah, that experience can be costly, but it can also be rewarding. So, Luis, as we wrap up, what are maybe some of those misconceptions or funny questions you might get when people find out that you work at NASA? Like, what is it?
I mean, I've gotten what is it the moon people, right? I mean, for folks who the flat Earth, flat earthers, folks who don't believe the moon is real, right? A lot of people who ask me like, did we actually land on the moon? You know, is there life out there? And it's like, oh, I mean, we have no proof of it. Probably is my assumption is of course, but you got to prove it.
And what's been the coolest part of your work right now or in the past?
I mean, I've had so many amazing experiences. I've launched now 3 missions into space. Um, one Mars rover, actually 2 Mars rovers. A satellite right now, like doing Earth science. It's called SMAP, soil moisture active passive. And so it goes around the Earth and it creates a water map of the Earth so that scientists can see how water is moving around the planet. Because that water is one of the best ways of transferring energy in our on our planet, and so it's very important, right, for weather and all that stuff. So it provides a lot of data for weather models. Also worked on another Psyche, right behind me, a satellite to go investigate an asteroid out in the asteroid belt. And so, it's had amazing opportunities, given tours to Seth MacFarlane, lots of diplomats and different folks in government, and it's been an amazing ride. I can't complain. And I'm really excited to see what's next, and see what opportunities are out there.
Luis, it's been inspiring to meet you and get to know you better through this conversation and really understand your way of thinking and your way of living. As a runner myself as well, I really am inspired by your breakdown of how do you assess certain situations, whether it's in running or your career, and especially money. Because the undertone in our conversation with this podcast really is about upward mobility, especially for the Latino community, that right now in these times we're facing a lot of social issues that we're going through and have been through. And I just want to end with your final thought or any call to action that you might have for our audience that are listening.
Try and make the world like the world that you want, right? And go out there and actually do things, right? Don't just talk about it, be about it, right? And bring action to those words, because talk is cheap, and we could talk about things all day, right? But we have to get moving forward, move ourselves forward, identify how we can use AI, right? What are we going to do with AI, right? How are we going to use that to help our community come up, right? How are we going to leverage that? Because we have to leverage it, right? And so understand, what it is. Get into AI, understand computer science, understand neural nets, understand how AI actually works. And so being able to like kind of understand that and how you can leverage that and where you fit in the puzzle, right? Because that's the most important part. I mean, that's life, right? You got to figure out where you fit in the puzzle. And if you're not comfortable being the puzzle piece you are, how do you change yourself, right? To be a different puzzle piece.
Yeah, that's a powerful statement, especially oftentimes, within our communities, sometimes we do get left behind, or, we kind of don't change the culture. And so I like in your message, it's almost like really encouraging people to follow trends and really figure out how we can fit in and really move ourselves forward, whether that's life, career, finance. And I think that that's really interesting, especially now, because we're seeing technologies being developed despite the social issues that are happening. And sometimes we might get distracted by what might be happening, or our circles might not be as broad to have these conversations or to talk about upcoming trends.
Yeah, and it's important to educate yourself as well. I mean, one of the other things is like, and that I didn't note it, but like when I run, I also often listen to podcasts of like educational podcasts of like finance or like just other things, and audiobooks of, kind of just like influential thinkers in finance and kind of different things, different books that I can find in Audible and things that I find interesting, or Spotify that I find interesting. And I just, something to zone out in and listen to. Because honestly, the truth is what'll always help you is education, right? Anything that you can learn, it doesn't matter the tool. Like, everything you learn is a tool that you put that in your tool belt, right? Every little thing you learn is just a tool in the tool belt. And like, the more you learn about it, the better that tool gets, right? And you can choose which tools you're going to hone and develop, right? But always be willing to learn. Like, always be willing to, like, hey, oh, I don't know how that works. Like, oh yeah, I'm going to go figure out how that works. Because you never know when you're going to need that skill, and you never know when it'll come in handy, and you never know what you learned, what you developed as you were learning that skill, that can be often used in other aspects in developing other skills. Like, the way your mind thought in developing that skill can be used in another way, and it can help you further hone another skill that you're really passionate about, right? Because it's kind of like this. Oh yeah, now that I think of it that way, I can kind of, level up, and so that's kind of the way I look at it.
Well, Luis, it's been a pleasure. I wish you best of luck on this upcoming marathon. I'm sure you got the right shoes and laces ready to go. Man, are you excited or what?
Yeah, for sure. Nah, I am. I'm happy because I also heard it's a very kind of like flat course. Like, it's not too like up and down. It's got some hills in it, but it's not anything crazy. Because San Diego, that was rough. Man, that was a painful last few miles.
Well, you're back at it, brothers. So best of luck to you.
All right, thanks, man.
All right.